The other day, one of our engineers, Sergei, gave a talk about how we ship fast at Replit, and a lot of people requested that we make it public. And so here we are. I hope you enjoy.
Let's see here. Okay, so the step one here is to code fast. That sounds obvious, but the truth of the matter is you can't ship fast until you code fast. And how do you do that? Well, it starts by hiring really talented people, right? Like ultimately, you just need talent. You need motivated engineers, people who are intrinsically motivated, especially at the early stage. The early stage is very difficult, and there's lots of reasons to give up because you have to build everything from scratch. You don't have this existing tooling like you do at big companies. You have to create your own abstractions, and it's like really, really hard work. And you also have to, in addition to doing all the other bullshit that companies have to do, you have to innovate and do something brand new that basically no one's done before, or doing something in a novel way that no one's done before. So yeah, it's not super easy. You need talented, motivated people. The people who succeed at early stage are different from the people that succeed at big companies and even at mid stage, right? So that's another interesting thing to look out for. I found that people who have spent like their entire careers at big companies don't always succeed super well at startup level, just because like you have different set of expectations. And even though those people are really smart, if you don't have the specific skills like building something from scratch and building the tooling to help other people move faster, then you probably will have a hard time. So on to the next point, which is give them problems that they're interested in working on, right? It's like when you think about when you've worked the hardest on anything, like it's always something that you're just absolutely like passionate about, you can't get enough of. And so that's going to help you there. Engineers, designers, anybody, they all just want to work on the thing that like they're obsessed with. And so the more you can do that, the better. Prioritize development experience. I think this is incredibly important, right? Like your engineers want to be happy. If they find that they're frustrated coding every day, well, they're not going to want to code every day. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Hire technically minded designers and product people. This is especially important when you're working on a dev tool like we are at Replit. But I would argue that it's important for any company just because like the more in tune your like non-technical people are with technical requirements, the better the requests and the asks are going to be. And that's pretty important because you don't want all this back and forth between, whether you have PMs or designers or whoever it is asking engineers for features and not understanding that what they're asking for is incredibly difficult. So the other point, which is incredibly important, especially at startups, is hire few people that can do multiple things well, not just a lot of people that do one thing really well, right? So for example, we have all of our designers code, which is cool. Some of our engineers design. Our finance guy runs ops and sales. When you have a company that's small, 10, 15, 20 people, we're a bit over 30 now, you need people who can do a lot of things. Wear many hats is the common terminology. You need people who wear a lot of hats. It also helps to hire people that are at the intersection of skills because they have a unique insight that most other people don't. So I find that to be really powerful. The other thing, and this is insanely important, especially as you're onboarding more and more engineers, people who are not familiar with the code base, build tools and abstractions that make everyone else ship faster. If you as an engineer can spend one day on something that'll save other people 3 days, like everyone else on the team, well, then that's incredible use of time. And of course, a lot of the times you're doing these things and it's like, damn, well, the end result of this is like, nobody's going to see, no user's going to see, but it will pay dividends down the line. And it will be very useful if you can increase productivity of everyone else because that compounds, right? Okay, step 2 in how to ship fast, reduce blockers. This is insanely important. Anything that is an impediment to shipping will compound over time. And I say this here, every second compounds, especially as the eng team scales, right? Any little roadblock now, if everyone on the team hits it or a large number of people and it happens consistently and consistently, even if it's like, oh, damn, CI failed, let me just rerun it. It only takes 20 minutes. Oh, man, my dev server's slow. It takes 5 seconds to refresh. Oh, man, deploying is like kind of a pain. Let's only do it twice a day instead of 3 times. It's like, well, it seems minor when you say it like that. But then when you put it like, oh, hey, you have to do this thing every day, and so do 20 other people. It's like, well, okay, maybe we should fix this. And we've hit this pain point a lot at Replit through various scenarios. CI in particular was really tough. We've had instances where we've had a number of tests that were incredibly flaky. And at one point, it brought the entire engineering team like basically to a halt. And that was when we were like, oh, hey, we should just spend like literally a week or two and fix this. At least like some subset of the team, 3 people went off and did it, but and just really dedicated their time to it. And then the result was that we ended up shipping way faster after that. We're no longer frustrated. We're no longer scared to open a PR because we're going to see red. And so these like little subtle things will pay off tremendously. This ties back to the DX thing, right? If your developers aren't happy, well, they're not going to be as motivated, and it's just not going to be a good time. But yeah, I mean, don't live with broken windows. Obviously, you wouldn't do that in your house. Why would you do that in your code base? Got a little meme for you. This is fine. When we are supposed to ship and all the automated tests are failing, it's like, basically, at startups, everything's on fire. So just like keep trying to put out the fires. They're going to keep coming up, but just put them out. Deploy continuously. This is incredibly important. I've been at companies where they deploy once a day. At bigger companies, it's once every, who knows, long time. The way we do it at Replit is really interesting, and it's my personal favorite. And I think, have tremendous success in doing this. That's part of why I think a lot of people comment, oh, hey, you guys ship fast. Well, it's because we deploy multiple times a day. In fact, we deploy every single time a commit lands on master. We do what's known as trunk-based development. There's lots of Git workflows you can do, feature branches, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's fine. I've tried a number of them. My favorite is what we do here, which is trunk-based development. And that means like there's one master branch, master main, whatever you want to call it. That's the branch that is the source of truth. That's the branch that deploys to staging and then to production. And everyone else makes a tiny branch off of that and tries to merge it in really quickly. And as soon as it's merged, that means it's ready for production. And if it's not ready for production, well, you shouldn't have merged it. The other thing we do is we don't really do like collaborative branches. It's usually each person has their own. Sometimes we hop in and we help out occasionally. Sometimes the designers like opened up a PR and then I took it over. But that's very rare. Everyone kind of has their own little thing, because another thing that's popular on our team is force pushing. And it's like if you force push on a branch that is shared, you're going to have a bad time. We just have like independent short-lived branches that get merged to master as soon as possible. Now, how do you have really long-lived features? Sometimes it takes 3, 6, 8 months to launch a feature. Not 8 months for us, but it could be a long time. We use flags. In particular, we use this service called Air Deploy, previously known as Airship, internally known as, actually, I'm not going to say it. And so this Airship service is like a third-party flagging service. I've seen, when I was at Coda, they had built their own. In any case, like you need a way to flag stuff. It's really good for A/B testing, and we do that as well, although to a lesser extent. But the biggest thing is we have long-lived features behind flags. That way, we're not afraid to develop really quickly and to iterate really quickly. And the biggest thing is to roll back, right? So it's like, oh, whoops, we found this major feature we're trying to launch. It's causing a huge bug. It's caused a big uptick in crashes. Well, just log on to the dashboard and just roll it back. Easy. It takes less than 30 seconds. So that's incredibly powerful, and it's a very much worth investing into. Like I said, deploy often ASAP. Always keep master deployable. That's such an important thing to us that we literally have a Heroku bot. In our Slack, we have a channel called Ops, where we do anything operation related that affects production. And our bot tells us, the picture is like Elon Musk smoking weed. It's funny. Our bot tells us, cool, this means you check your changes on staging and they look fine. Otherwise, you can revert those commits. Always keep master deployable. That's essentially what happens. And basically, you can see here, I have 2 screenshots. To the left is once we land a commit. This is like our workflow specific to Replit, and I like it a lot. But basically, what happens once you merge your PR and master, that's going to run the entire CI suite. We have 2, at least on the web side on the web repo. The first of which is Heroku, which runs all of our Jest tests, of which we have a lot. So that takes some time. And then the other is a GitHub action we use for lints and types. So that's things like ESLint, Prettier, TypeScript, and Flow. So that'll run through concurrently. So that way lints and types might fail a lot sooner. And then it's like, okay, fix your indentation or whatever. But the Heroku test suite runs all of our unit tests, which is really cool. And then as soon as that's green, that's going to auto deploy to staging. And then we have this step where there's kind of two things that happen. The first is we have smoke tests run. What a smoke test is it's basically an end-to-end test, pretty much an integration test. We use this service called walrus.ai. They're pretty neat. Basically, with their service, the whole pitch is like, initially, you write down a set of instructions. So as opposed to a service like or like a programmatic utility like Cypress, you have to write code to do things in your app. With Walrus, the whole pitch there is like you just write an instruction set, like just plain English. Step 1, log in. Step 2, click the green button. Step 3, verify that output is on the terminal. And then they basically train a model to do it. First it's a human, and then eventually the model learns how to do it. So anyways, that's what we use. We find it's been pretty helpful. So you'll see in the right screenshot here, we do /smoke test status. We have another bot. We have a lot of bots internally. Another bot that talks to Walrus API, and it says, hey, are the tests associated with the previous commit done? If they're not, we'll typically wait, and we usually wait until they're all passed to promote. And so then we do /promote Replit, and that'll talk to the Heroku bot and say, hey, promote what's currently on staging to production. And of course, the other aspect of checking staging, in addition to the automated tests, is like going in and checking yourself, right? So if I completely redid our about page, I'm going to go to our about page on staging and just look at, does it look like I want it to? If I made some change related to, terminal, I'm going to go and check and see that the thing that I fixed is working on staging, even if it's not working on prod. And we do the manual check deliberately because our end-to-end tests aren't comprehensive enough yet. They only run in the IDE, and they only do a small subset of things. What they do is, that's really powerful, is check to make sure that you can type in a REPL and run code, because there have been times where we regressed even on that. There are times where I personally broke the run button multiple, 2 or 3 times. So we basically want to that's an invariant for us. Code always has to run. And it always, you always have to be able to type. So at least we test that. So now luckily we almost never break that. So yeah, like I said, short-lived branches, long-lived flags. Flags live for a long time, depending on the size of the feature. And lastly, don't wait for perfection. Ship and then iterate. And so we have to deal with this a lot. It's oh man, there's this little thing, I just need to fix this thing. And then another thing comes up. It's just ship it, let's go. And then you'll iterate, you can follow on, it's fine. If people have a less than ideal version for 2 days, that's over the lifetime of the rest of that feature's life. It's nothing. So just move on, because you're going to have to cut corners sometimes. So just at least get it out the door, because that's better than no usage at all. Okay. Step 4, parallelize, right? And this is incredibly important. This is what I think we do really well. This is our secret sauce. Companies deploy quickly. But people are holy shit, how did you guys launch 3 features in a week? How did you guys make Hacker News 4 times in 2 weeks? And it's how did you make an open source JavaScript gaming library and X feature, you know what I mean? It's just so much unrelated stuff is going on. And that's because we're very, very good at parallelizing. The first step to doing that, and this is incredibly important, this is top of mind for me. Create a culture of autonomy where every engineer feels empowered to make decisions, okay? And obviously not just engineer, designer, anyone, because great ideas come from everywhere. And ultimately, regardless of who you are, even if you're an intern, even if you have not written a line of code in your life, your input is valuable. You provide perspective that no one else does, at least to some extent. So create a culture where people are able to pitch their ideas and are able to actually have a voice to talk directly to the CEO and say, hey, about this feature, I like it, but I think it's a little blah, blah. And then once people have enough experience in the code base, right? They're familiar with how things work, and they've been through the development cycle enough times. Give them decision making abilities, and that's huge, right? So when you think of, for example, an internship or a quote unquote new grad position. I came in when I was a new grad. I was 4 months out of college when I joined. It's that doesn't matter. like I was never ever treated like I was anything less than the 10-year experienced engineers on our team. So and because of that, I got to make an incredible amount of decisions. I got to play a huge role in our hiring process. I got to play a huge role in, I basically developed the features I did end to end. I would make big changes to the product just because I felt very strongly about them. I pitched to the team, and a lot of people on the team agreed with me. And so if you have a culture of acceptance for those sort of things, then you're going to ship much faster, because it's not like one or three or five people making decisions. It's like the whole team. And so just being able to delegate that appropriately, and like having trust in the people you work for, because if you don't trust them, well, you probably shouldn't have hired them. But if you do trust them, well, like really trust them, like say, hey, here are the keys, go and drive the car. And so I see this, one of our interns, Arnav, ships like an absolute madman. You couldn't tell he's an intern. I mean, he's been here for a year now, but he is just like ridiculous, like owning end-to-end huge impactful projects. He made Threads, which some of you guys might know. It's like the comments and code. And he's doing all this stuff by himself, but he's like an intern. And any other bigger company would have been like, no, you're an intern. Go ask your manager's manager for the approval. It's like, no. You're squandering talent, what you're doing. Just because a kid's young, just because he's like hasn't finished school yet, he's shipping more than most full-time engineers I've seen. It's like, maybe give him a chance. So that's what I would say to that. Assign as few people as possible to a project. So the way we do it at Replit is very cool. I like it a lot. We have basically a project, a design doc. Somebody writes up, hey, what is this feature? Why is it important? Blah, blah, blah. What are the technical requirements? And then we assign an owner and then stakeholders. The owner is really important. There's always one owner. There's one owner that takes a project end to end and finishes it and makes sure that it gets done and blogged about and shipped, right? And then there's a number of stakeholders, usually around 2. But they're playing like a part-time role, right? So they're not like super in it like the owner is. Maybe you have a designer because you have a lot of UI changes you need to make. Maybe you have another engineer who's like really familiar with this part of the code base that you haven't touched much. And so their job is very much secondary. So it's like, okay, reviewing your PRs as they come up. It's occasionally hopping on meetings to discuss some really heavy context stuff that you're not familiar with. Providing mock-ups if it's design, providing product ideas. But ultimately it's the owner who not only writes the design doc, implements the feature, and like ships it. Then they go on to blog about it. Then they go on to maintain it. Like we have this very strong ownership culture. And again, there's no barrier in terms of age or experience. It's like, if you own a project, you own it. Like if you're really good at this thing, then just do it. Like there's no arbitrary like, oh, sorry, you're not 2 years experience yet. You can't own it, which is really powerful. And so that's what allows us to ship a lot of different features within a short amount of time, because there's always like 3 projects going on at once. Very rarely have we like stopped the whole company and worked on one thing, because like we have all this talent. It's like, why not just fork in the road? Boom, you guys all work on this stuff. And then all of a sudden we're just like launching 3 things back to back. And people are like, whoa, how did you do that? Well, it's like, we just put the right people in the right place and then didn't waste anyone's time, which is a good segue to meetings. Meetings are a popular thing in companies, but the reality is that like you should strive to keep them to a minimum. They're important, very important, but meet only when you need to, right? Recurring meetings are often a waste of time. Sometimes they're not, but one-on-ones can often be not very useful. And just generally like be mindful of people's time, especially engineers, especially people who have been at the company and have a lot of context. It's like, well, we want to make sure all of those really talented people that we work with are using their time to the most effective, right? And so if it's like spending a lot of time in meetings that they're not really like learning from or contributing to, well, you should cut that close. With that said, oftentimes you do need to meet. You need some context. You need some big product decision to make. Keep it short and focused. And we've gotten really good at that. Initially, we weren't that great, but over time, especially after we went fully remote, we got really good at like, 1, bring an agenda to meetings. 2, we're starting to like be less and less late. We used to be like, show up like 5 minutes. It's like, no, show up on time, have an agenda, know exactly what you're going to talk about and exactly which questions you want answered. And then this is the biggest thing, leave with action items, right? So after a meeting, it's like, okay, great, you met. Well, like now what? So your goal for almost every meeting is to come out the other end with, hey, this is what we need to do, and this is who's going to do it. Assign tasks. We use Asana as a task manager. You could use Linear, Jira, whatever, it doesn't matter. Assign someone the task and make sure it gets done. Otherwise, it's just going to float in the abyss, and everyone's going to be like, oh, remember that thing we talked about 2 weeks ago? Who did that? It's like no one. Well, so yeah, keep it short and focused. Action items, very actionable. Allow everyone to contribute. Yeah, that's my whole spiel. I have a meme here. You work on front end, and I will work on back end. After a month, front end, back end. So that's very important, because most companies have this distinction, which is what I think we do really well at Replit. Most companies are like, okay, we have a front end engineer and we have a back end engineer, and then we have an infrastructure engineer. It's like, fuck that. Like, that's not how like the real world works. That's not how like things are actually naturally split. It's like the reality is that like a person who owns a feature should do what it takes to get the feature done, right? And it's like, it's very limiting to tell talented people, hey, you can only write JavaScript and you can only write the front end, and then someone else will do the back end. Don't worry about it. Because one, it hurts their growth as an engineer. It hurts the impact that they can have on both the company and the product. And two, it hurts the product itself, because you have one person who only understands half of the problem instead of one person who understands the whole problem. So as much as possible, make it so that each engineer is able to contribute across the stack, right? And so Replit, effectively, every engineer is full stack. We have a bit of a split where like some people are more specialized on the infrastructure side, or if it's all written in Go. I couldn't do the crazy stuff some of my teammates are doing. I'm more well versed on the React Node side. Yes, everyone has specializations, but don't draw arbitrary barriers, especially for a single feature, because that will more often than not hurt you. And so that's why I'm very proud of our every engineer is full stack mantra. Cool. And lastly, think radically, act incrementally. This was something actually Amjad, our CEO, said recently. And it's almost like an unofficial mantra now. And it was great because one, it's kind of like catchy. It's like, damn, think radically, act incrementally. But two, it's like, this is like actually how we operate. And that's how a lot of really successful companies operate, right? Because they think big. They think you have to be ridiculously ambitious to do what Apple and Microsoft and Google and hopefully Replit is doing and has done. But at the same time, you have to like make it realistic. You have to act incrementally. You have to think big, but break it down into digestible pieces, right? Because otherwise it's not going to get done. If you have this like massive, absolutely enormous thing that you need to do, you're like, oh, I don't want to do it. It's so hard. But it's like, if you just break it down into 5 pieces and you say, okay, phase 1, we're doing this. Here's the deadline. These are the action items. Phase 2, break it down one by one. Then you'll know how to get there. The other thing is plan more, a lot more. I've realized this like the hard way sometimes. I had another quote I wanted to put in here, which was weeks of programming can save you hours of planning. Okay, and that's important because sometimes if you just plan for 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever it is, plan for a day, you can save yourself weeks of going down the wrong track before you realize, oh wait, this actually isn't going to work. So we've gotten really good at spending a lot of time in the planning stage. Me in particular, I used to have this like rush to like, let's go, let's write code, let's ship. And then I saw it backfire on me a few times. And then I was like, all right, maybe I should just like figure out what I'm doing first and like talk to the team instead of putting up PRs. So I highly encourage that. Set goals and deadlines for yourself. We're not a big deadlines company at all. We don't really have like deadlines, which is really cool because most companies do and deadlines suck. But like, it's all about self-discipline, right? Because like someone else, like your manager or, if you're at a big company, your manager's manager isn't going to know like the gritty of like whatever it is you need done. They don't know the technical details. They don't know how long it's going to take. They don't know the possible roadblocks. So it's like, it's up to every engineer and every person on a project to make their own deadlines. And so we've been making a big deal of like having internal deadlines for big product launches, like apps, like boosts, which I got to work on recently and launch. And sometimes they get pushed back and that's okay. Something comes up completely unexpected. Okay, we're gonna have to push it back to next Monday. Or, oh, whoops, I realized I have to run the script against the whole prod DB. The data is not where it needs to be. We can't ship this as is. It's like, okay, that's fine. It comes up. But the whole, at the very least, you put yourself a goalpost, right? Boom. I'm going to get this done by next Friday, 2 weeks from now. And it's like, now you have something that you're shooting for. And just by the very nature of human psychology, you just work harder to get there. And sometimes you don't hit it. That's fine. Readjust. But be really aggressive. Be aggressive, but realistic. Elon Musk is well known for this. He's obviously very aggressive in deadlines. He's also wrong all the time. He's also like wildly off. So I think there's like a comfortable in between. But yeah, I mean, like more often than not, you and your teammates have much, much more potential than anyone gives you credit for. So it's like, just set something aggressive because you're probably going to hit it, even if you don't think you are. But also like account for possible roadblocks. Cut scope and actually ship it. This is like huge. And I've realized this working on like the hard part about the real world is like there's no real answer. And one of our engineers, Mason, put it really well. He said it's called fixed time variable scope, which is like literally how every project is, pretty much, because like you have basically a set amount of time you want to get this out by. Okay, I want to ship this in 2 weeks, whatever it is you set it to. But like the scope is variable. Oftentimes, in fact, it's damn near infinite, where like you get to like almost the end, you get to like 90% done, and then you're like, oh, you know what? Like, let me just add this other feature, or let me just, you know what? I have to tweak this. And it's like, no. You just got to ship it. Like at some point, and I alluded to this earlier, at some point, you just have to ship it. So that's kind of what this like graphic here is. The project requirements, you just cut it, drop it down, ship it.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to Sergei on Twitter. And if you have any video requests for the future, let us know in the comment section below. Okay, bye.